Hi, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Nice to see you all here. There's no snow in the forecast. So yeah, we are so excited that you're here for our program, From a House of Cards to a Strong Foundation, Redefining Success in Our Community. I'm Dana Pierce, a school counselor here at the high school and a member of this year's Big Read Creation Team. I also have the great good fortune, honor, and privilege of moderating tonight's panel discussion. So as some of you probably remember, in January, we finished up our FM Community Big Read of the book Never Enough, When Achievement Culture Becomes Toxic and What We Can Do About It by Jennifer Wallace. The event was originally scheduled for January 28th, but Mother Nature was in charge. A good reminder, we have no control over the weather. And we got snowed out. So it doesn't matter because here we are and you're here and we're really happy to see you. So can I see a show of hands? And it's cool that I can see. Thank you for that. Can I see a show of hands of how many of our big readers are in the audience? Oh, yes. Thank you. And some of you are on our live stream. Thank you. Is it this one or both? Maybe. Hi, everybody. Thank you. We're also really grateful. We've got some young people in our audience tonight, and we've got lots of people from our district, some from other places as well, so a big welcome to all of you. We just have a great night planned for you, our keynote from Dr. Melissa Carman, and then a compelling and inspiring conversation with our esteemed panelists. So while this evening's conversation is being offered in connection with the Big Read, we felt really strongly that we should just invite everyone because we believe that we all of us, and even all the people who are not here tonight, need to work together for the overall wellness of our kids and families. We need to grow our definition of success from one where achievement as the primary value is at the heart of our story to a broader, healthier definition of success that places mattering and meaningful connection truly at the center of who we are, both individually and collectively. So you don't need to have read Never Enough to benefit from tonight's discussion, but perhaps this conversation encouraged you to go pick up a copy, take a look, apply the ideas to your family, to your school, to your work, and to our greater community. So just a quick shout out, we had 12 faculty members on our Big Read Creation Team this year. It was amazing. And while not everyone could be here tonight, we have a number of them here, so I just ask you to stand and be recognized. I think they're down in this corner here, so just thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your service to the district and to the community as a whole. As educators, we know how fortunate we are to work in a district with leaders who are forward-thinking, deeply caring, and supportive of initiatives like the Big Read and tonight's event. So a big thank you to our school administrators, from the district office to the building level, to our school board members. We really appreciate your participation and support. Now, it's my privilege and honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Melissa Carman. Dr. Carman is the founder and executive director of CNY Mental Health Counseling, a thriving group practice with 14 counselors located in both Manlius and Fayetteville. A Central New York native, Dr. Carman's journey has taken her from Cornell, where she earned a bachelor's degree in human development, to the University of North Carolina for her master's in mental health counseling. She then returned to the area, earning her doctorate in counseling and supervision at Syracuse University. After starting her career at Syracuse University Counseling Center, where she specialized in supporting student athletes and the broader student body with holistic well-being, performance enhancement, emotional regulation, and navigating academic, personal, and identity challenges, Melissa launched her private practice in 2011. Over the years, her passion for enhancing accessibility to high-quality mental health care has driven her to transform her practice into a collaborative hub for individuals, couples, and organizations through the creation of formalized partnerships. CNY Mental Health Counseling is a proud partner to the Fayetteville-Manlius School District. Today, Melissa's focus extends beyond traditional counseling. Through her coaching practice, Dr. Melissa Carman Coaching, she works with executives, entrepreneurs, and leaders in healthcare, education, and private sectors to help them thrive as leaders. By addressing blind spots and navigating both personal and professional challenges, she empowers clients to foster growth, resilience, and meaningful impact. Outside of her professional endeavors, Melissa loves spending time with her husband and their 6 children in their various activities, cherishing the energy and connection of their blended family. They find joy in traveling, hiking, discovering new restaurants, spending time with their cousins and grandparents, and recharging at their camp on Lake Ontario. Please let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Melissa Carman.
So when Dana asked me to be a part of tonight, I initially was like, oh, Dana, I don't do that. I talk with people behind closed doors. I teach, but I certainly don't do speeches or keynotes like this. And then, as Dana does, she reassures me, when you speak, people listen. I'm like, why? Why is that? They do, that's good. I'm glad that they listen. But at the same time, I'm like, what do I have to say? And I lost sleep for about a night, and then I came back to her and I said, yes, of course I'll do it, because this isn't about getting it perfect to me. But I also realized that I actually have a lot to say. So, to start out, before I really get into it, I want to express my heartfelt thanks to you, Dana, to the Big Read team, and to the FM School District for the honor of being a part of this powerful initiative. It is both a privilege to be a part of it and to also be in this community that is so deeply committed to reflection, connection, and growth. So tonight, I want to begin with a story. It was a gorgeous day at the end of May, the kind of spring day we crave all winter long, the kind that demands that everyone be outside, the kind that we're still craving right now. It was my junior year at Cornell University. It's actually the year 2000. The semester was officially over, but there I was, walking into the basement of Martha Van Rensselaer Hall to take my final exam for a class called Human Bonding with the legendary professor, Cindy Hazan. 2 weeks earlier, I was scheduled to take the exam with my classmates, but my grandmother passed away. I was grateful for the extra time Professor Hazan granted me because I needed it. But when I returned to campus, I was so overwhelmed, grieving, juggling papers and finals, and facing the looming absence of my 2 roommates, both graduating that semester as they were a year ahead of me. The thought of navigating my senior year without them felt like a tidal wave of anxiety that I was trying so desperately just to not feel. Somehow, I pushed through the statistics final and turned in my papers, but I ignored an email from Professor Hazan about rescheduling my human bonding exam. Truthfully, I was avoiding it, really telling myself that I would deal with it later. Then she left me a voicemail, and I can still hear it in my mind. I still remember opening up my flip phone and hearing her say, "Melissa, this is Professor Hazan. I've been trying to reach you. I'm so sorry to hear about the loss of your grandmother, but we are at the end of the semester, and my grades are due. If you don't come in to take the exam, I'm afraid I'll have to submit your grade as a 0. My heart sank. I was totally panicked. I was flooded with fear and anxiety, and I replied to her email immediately, scrambling to schedule the exam. I felt completely untethered and panicked. When I was with my friends and my family at that time, I could keep it together, laughing even. But alone, the weight of grief, academic pressure, anxiety about the social transition I was about to face, and very, very familiar self-imposed expectations crushed me. The next day, I showed up for the exam, barely prepared, numb, and mechanical as I filled in the Scantron answers. When I finished, I hand-delivered my exam back to Professor Hazan in her office. But what happened next has stayed with me ever since. As I handed her my exam, she looked at me directly in the eyes and she asked, "Are you okay?" My face flushed. My eyes welled with tears, and in that moment, I felt my entire facade crumble. She saw through me. I don't know, I said honestly, barely holding it together with a pinch in my throat and trying desperately to hold back tears. She encouraged me to lean on my support system and gave me the advice to reach out to a counselor. I promised I would. That afternoon, I opened the yellow pages and called therapists. Most were booked for at least 6 months and offered to put me on a wait list. Even that stuck with me. It shaped how I think about access to care and urgency of support, and it's why in 15 years of private practice, I still refuse to keep a wait list. If someone finds the courage to ask for help, then we need to do everything we can do to make sure they are met, not put on hold. But that's a soapbox for another day. That wasn't the only thing that shifted in me. In that moment of vulnerability, something inside me cracked open. For the first time, I saw the house of cards I'd built, high achieving on the outside, but fragile within. And I knew I could not keep living like that. I called my parents, who had no idea that I was so deeply struggling, and they reassured me that things would work out, that I could trust myself if I just took one step forward at a time. My parents' support, they are right out there in this audience, it's always been unconditional. They didn't dismiss my feelings or minimize my struggles. It's not that they always said the right thing, but they didn't question my priorities or confront me about whether I had studied enough. In fact, they never did. Not ever. And it's not because I always got A's, I didn't. Their love and belief in me never, ever hinged on my performance. It was an emotional safety net, always there to support me no matter what. It was there when I totaled their car. Remember that, Dad? Yep. When I smuggled a kitten into their house, told them that the kitten was just found, and really we smuggled it in, told them about that 3 years later. And it was even there when I told them that I needed their help to get a divorce. It was there when I won awards and races and when I was at my lowest. It's the greatest protective factor, and it allowed me to gain the independence and confidence to thrive on my own. But here's the other thing. Professor Hazan, she did not need to allow me to reschedule my exam. She certainly did not need to hunt me down, leaving multiple messages for me to come in. And she did not need to ask me if I was okay, but she did. And in that moment, she made me feel like I mattered, despite never having a one-on-one interaction with her before that day. Her question was simple but profound, and it taught me a lifelong lesson that the smallest act of just seeing someone, expressing care and concern, can make such an enormous difference and stay with them forever. Mattering. Feeling seen, valued, and understood is the protective factor that Jennifer Wallace writes about so beautifully in Never Enough. It's the antidote to the house of cards, a life that looks impressive on the outside but is so fragile that with one gust of stress, failure, or exhaustion can bring it all down. So tonight, we hold ourselves accountable. Our communities collectively are high achieving and so proud, and we've earned that. But strengths come with shadows. The pressure to succeed can easily become overwhelming. Your attendance here tonight or watching online, it is reflective of attention to a plea from so many in our community. And I invite you to listen this evening with an open mind, allowing yourself to place judgment and worry up on a shelf. I ask you to reflect on tonight's discussion after you leave here, holding yourself accountable and asking whether you are contributing to the house of cards or to a solid foundation. See, success and well-being, they are not mutually exclusive. My work today as a therapist, a leader, and a coach exists at that intersection. I teach people the power of both and. We can be high-achieving and emotionally healthy. Our worth isn't tied to accolades or to zip codes, but to who we are, how we make others feel, and the legacy we leave. So, we know this. Why is it so hard? In a world that is obsessed with materialism and achievement, it's easy to lose sight of what matters. Every single parent that I have met, every educator and coach, my friends, parents who show up in tears in my counseling office, my own parents and me included, we are all so well-intended, but sometimes we get derailed by the current of achievement and we miss the most important thing that we can do, making sure that our kids know that they matter. When performance pressure, parental burnout, and societal comparisons take the driver's seat, children are left questioning their intrinsic value as we bulldoze them with rigidity and control and bury them with the weight of our own hopes and dreams for them. It's important to know what this looks like when it's happening. When our kids are trying to live up to a perceived agenda to achieve the goals that the adults in their lives have set for them, a relentless, internalized motor starts to emerge. In order to achieve this, they feel the need to elbow out the competition, push through limits and discomfort, get the best grades in the hardest classes, attend the best colleges, excel in sports, excel in music, make sure we're leaders, volunteer on the weekends, not really need to sleep, not really consider nutrition, not really need to spend all that much time just being social or even needing friends. And guess what? They also need to be happy while they do it. If we aren't happy, then we're failing. If we get a B, then we're failing. If we don't fill our courses with advanced or AP classes, then we're failing. Sometimes, if we don't take a lunch, or if we do take a lunch, then we're failing. If we don't get into our top-tier school, then we're failing. If we get burnt out and don't want to continue to play the sport that you paid for me to play, starting when I was 3 years old, then we're failing. And to the adults in my life, not only am I failing myself, but worse, it feels like I am failing you. And this isn't just about our kids either. We tell ourselves the same things about the job promotion, about the street we live on, about the car we drive or how much we make, or even our body image. It's exhausting and overwhelming, and it sends a damaging message to our children that their worth is solely based on outcomes, what they accomplish, how much grit they show, and measurable performance indicators like grades, scores, and stats. But any good business leader is going to tell you that success can't thrive on key performance indicators alone, or KPIs. While KPIs definitely help track progress, a thriving business or family or person, it also depends on strong relationships, a healthy culture, and alignment with meaningful values. This pressure becomes a cooker and it impacts all kids, and it disproportionately burdens those who already feel unseen. The student pushing through AP classes to prove themselves or forgoing social activities to study flashcards to get a perfect SAT score. The chatter amongst the 7th graders as they find out if they were one of the chosen ones for the accelerated program. The athlete performing to earn love. They need us to remind them that their value is not in what they do, but in who they are. Because when they fall short, they don't just feel inadequate. They feel like failures, and in a culture that rushes past emotion, where quality time is scarce, resilience just doesn't have room to grow. The strongest protective factors, they do begin at home. Attachment theory tells us that, with primary attachments. But for them to truly take root, they must extend beyond the home. Support needs to be holistic, showing up consistently in our schools, friendships, and community. I've got a Cornell diploma on my wall, but it doesn't tell my story. I was a driven kid, passionate about so many different things: theater, music, leadership, pulled up in varsity in 8th grade in 2 different sports. But early in my senior year, injuries crushed my running dreams. Then, just a few months later, came college rejections. 5 out of 6 schools said no. I couldn't even bring myself to tell anyone at first, even my parents. I was devastated, ashamed, shocked, and scared. The system I had relied on, achievement, discipline, recognition, and validation, felt like it had failed me. Worse, I felt like I had failed myself. Or so I thought. In the wake of those perceived failures, I felt disoriented and defeated, but they also forced me to dig deeper, to question the story I had been telling myself about success, identity, and worth, and how someone gets there. Over time, I found my way through, and in doing so, I began to build real resilience, not the kind earned through accolades, but through reflection, honesty, and growth. Those moments became part of a deeper process that changed how I understand myself. Now I run 2 businesses rooted in communication and connection, despite the feedback from my both SAT and GRE verbal scores that were so bad that said I shouldn't talk to anyone, ever. I have been able to build a life that I love, surrounded by people I love, and I get to make a difference in others' lives every day. And as devastating as it felt at the time, the college rejections, the injuries, the heartbreaks, the test scores, they didn't define me then or now. But they are one part of a much larger story. They weren't failures. They were invitations to listen more closely, to learn more deeply, and to become an honest version of who I really am. They became the fabric of my story, and they taught me I matter more than what I accomplish. That belief drives my work to this day. I teach people to build strong foundations, to focus on the process, not just the result. Not only is it the foundation of my counseling practice, but it's also what inspired me to take a sidestep and build a transformative leadership training, Unlocking the Leader Within, which I designed for executive teams who want to optimize performance by leading from the inside out, without losing themselves in the process, and really it's about finding themselves in the process. I have learned that the key to success and achievement, paradoxically, is not focusing on outcomes. While you do need to know where you want to go, the focus and the attention needs to be on the process itself. In other words, if the outcomes and the goals are at the top of the pyramid, then thriving means building a strong base first. I am talking to all of you, teachers, parents, administrators, coaches, and yes, even to the students listening. Now, I do know that just by way of you making yourself here, many of you are already doing this. But it's still a good reminder for us all. So, these are 6 necessary ingredients for building a steady foundation. 1, understand factory settings and cultivate a sense of self. Every person is born with a core temperament, our drive, energy, and sensitivity. These traits are not flaws to fix. They are foundational. Research shows that they don't change over time, so our job isn't to override them, but to help our children understand and honor them. That means talking with them, exposing them to new experiences, and letting them walk away from what doesn't fit, because sometimes stepping back, walking away, is the wisest growth move for them and for you. Thriving isn't about controlling their path, it's about creating the space for them to find it. 2, recognize how feedback becomes an internal voice. Everyone has an internal critic. It's the little voice inside of your head that tells you when you are doing something wrong. If you listen closely, you may recognize whose voice it echoes. That's the process that's called internalization, and it begins in childhood. Feedback shapes a child's self-concept. Harsh or careless words can seed shame, while thoughtful, behavior-focused feedback builds resilience. The messages I was able to internalize from my parents were ones of support. It's okay to try. Yes, it does hurt to fall, but now get back up. You can do this. So next time you're tempted to ask, why would you do that? What's wrong with you? Pause. Try instead. What can we learn from this? What could we try next time? That one shift changes so much. 3, shift motivation from extrinsic to intrinsic. Most motivation starts outside of us. Stickers, grades, praise. But true growth happens when kids connect to why they care. Take learning the piano, for example. A child might practice for gold stars or applause, or maybe because they are forced by you to do it. But when the praise fades or the pressure grows, they quit, unless they've fallen in love with the process. Our role is to help them find meaning, mastery, and joy in what they do, not just what they get from it. That's the difference between chasing worth and discovering it. 4, let people know they matter. We develop a sense of mattering when we help others feel like they matter. Connection and purpose are at the heart of this. The longest running study on human development, Harvard's 80-year adult development study, found that supportive relationships are the key to a meaningful life. We strengthen someone's sense of self-worth and our own every single time we pause to say, hey, I see you, I value you, I'm here. Sometimes it's as small as noticing effort. Sometimes it's asking, are you okay? And really listening to the answer. 5, be the safety net. All of us need to be the safety net. My parents were my first safety net. Now I am my own, and there have been so many other sources of it in between. We must ensure our kids don't push so hard that they break. That means helping them evaluate their commitments, recognize limits, and rest without guilt. It means modeling boundaries and building our own internal compass because they are watching us more than they are listening to us. Let me repeat that. They are watching us more than they are listening to us. Over time, they will learn when to push and when to pause. But first, they need us to show them how to do that. 6, this is the last one. Build a connection with yourself. Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space is where self-awareness lives. But building that kind of connection, it takes time. It means slowing down, getting quiet, and being willing to ask, who am I, really? Not just once, but over and over and over again. I have seen the power of this as a therapist. When someone sheds the layers of who they thought they had to be and steps into who they truly are, that's when they realize they have been enough all along, perfectly imperfect and whole. So when we talk about thriving, we are not talking about building a longer resume. We're talking about deepening our roots, about building a life that can stand up to inevitable obstacles. That starts with seeing each other, with slowing down, with replacing pressure with presence. It grows when we create safety nets, boundaries with flexibility, and when we model how to rest, reset, and begin again. And it becomes lasting when we help children and ourselves reconnect with who we truly are, not who we think we need to be. It requires intention. It requires flexibility. It requires the courage to stop, to adjust, and to resist the temptation to define our worth by outcomes. It asks us to replace rigidity with reflection, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because that's when it matters the most. This is the work, the human, hard, transformative work. But when we do this, we don't just raise resilient children. We actually become resilient people. So we come full circle. The class that inspired this story was human bonding. There's an irony here. My entire career has been built on human bonding and relationships. I got a C in that class. But it taught me a lesson more valuable than many of the A's that I've ever earned, that it is okay to fall, to feel seen, and to know that you matter. That lesson has shaped everything I do. Now, I'd like to introduce the incredible group of people joining me on the stage this evening. Their professional bios, filled with just some of their impressive accomplishments, are not the reason that they are here on this panel. Each of them brings a unique story, perspective, and heart. They have navigated successes and setbacks with resilience and purpose, and they each exemplify the importance of connection to family, to community, and themselves. Will Hartley is a student assistance counselor at Jamesville-Dewitt High School, a social worker, and someone who has spent decades supporting our community with unwavering dedication. When I asked Will, really begged Will, to be on this panel, we joked about the life he didn't choose. Go ahead. Yes. We joked about the life he didn't choose after being a lacrosse player at Princeton. the life that he could have had if he went to Wall Street and had $1 bajillion. But it's the path that he did choose that makes him so inspiring. Will has built his life on values, on serving others, supporting families, and making a meaningful difference in ways that truly matter. Every time I have asked Will to jump in, and it has been a solid handful of times in some pretty dicey situations, he doesn't hesitate. I'm also biased because Will has a blended family with six kids, another modern Brady bunch, just like my own. So please join me in welcoming the incredible Will Hartley. Kate Houck is the CEO of David's Refuge and the founder of Brave CNY, a leader whose work transforms lives and inspires change. Kate is someone who has a way of guiding and uplifting others, much like a lighthouse, steady, reliable, and full of purpose. Kate does not just lead with just strategy. She leads with heart, creating spaces where people feel seen and supported. There's a fun fact about Kate, and I never stop on an opportunity to share this. She brews her own kombucha, which is a small but fitting example, I think, of her creative and thoughtful approach to life. So please join me in welcoming Kate Houck. Dr. Kaushal Nanavati is an integrative medicine physician and assistant dean of wellness at Upstate Medical University. While you pick that up, I'm going to keep going. Dr. Nanavati's story is a testament to the power of connection, both to ourselves and to others. Growing up in a tough neighborhood, he's turned every challenge into opportunity to create meaning and build bridges. Dr. Nanavati is known for his dancing, homemade extra gingery chai, and his ability to bring joy wherever he goes. Whether he's mentoring others, writing books, or giving talks, he radiates positivity and inspiration. So please join me in welcoming the remarkable Dr. Kaushal Nanavati. And last but certainly not least, Dana Pierce is a school counselor at FM High School, where she's supported students and families for 30 years. She is also at the heart behind this entire event. I'm going to ask you to just wait up here with me, if that's okay. All right, thanks. She's the coordinator of the Big Read, and after decades of service, she is retiring this year. Dana's passion for advocacy and innovation is unmatched, earning her recognition from Michelle Obama at the White House when she was named New York State School Counselor of the Year. She's the kind of counselor who agreed to have a phone consult with me at 6:30 a.m. to strategize around a student in crisis, making sure every detail was in place for their success. That is Dana, always thinking outside the box, always going above and beyond. She's also the driving force behind FM's beloved therapy dog program, which has grown from 1 dog to 18 across the district. Dana, we will miss you. Please join me in honoring the remarkable Dana Pierce, and also thank you. Oh my God. Like, this is the part that'll make me emotional. So, as we wrap up, let's reflect on the opportunity we have. As parents, educators, and community members, we have the responsibility to build something stronger, not just for our kids, but for ourselves. Resilience starts with us. Let's create a culture where connection outweighs competition, where failure is reframed as growth, and where every person knows they belong, especially those who may feel they've been on the outside looking in, or those who are feeling like the bottom may drop out at any moment. Let's ensure that every person, no matter where they come from or what they're good at, knows they matter deeply, just as they are. When we commit to strengthening ourselves and each other, becoming more resilient, self-aware, and authentic, we set the example, and we set the bar high. So let's start here, in this room, but let's not stop here. Let's carry this forward into our homes, our classrooms, our offices, and into the culture and community that we choose to create. Thank you.
I'm really glad you said yes. Just saying.
Really glad you asked.
And all of you, thank you so much for being here tonight. We have so much cool stuff to talk about. And you used the word thriving. And so I think maybe we should start talking about growing this definition of success so that we're really focusing on process and thriving. So I think that we sometimes have this notion, at least I think talking with students here, and you all may have talked with folks who feel the same way, that we have this idea as we're growing up that success, it's just going to be in front of us, and there's a straight line there. So if I do these things, so if I go to high school and I graduate, and then I go to college, and then I graduate, and then I maybe go to grad school, or I get a job, and then the next thing in the line, so we're headed in this direction, that's our plan, and the next thing in the line could be I meet someone special, I buy a house, I rescue a dog, of course. Whatever that might be, I think we sometimes have that idea, and we get really rattled and think that we're failing when the curve happens. Or if you're like me, or most of us maybe, the curves happen, those turning points, right? So I think we all have those turning points where you talked about your professor and the kindnesses that she showed you, how that actually was so incredibly huge in your life and continues to be. So we have those moments. I wonder if we could just talk about some of those turning point moments and what we learned from them. Anybody want to start?
I can start. I find myself as a 43-year-old woman saying, I wish someone had told me all of these things a lot sooner. And so I find that I'm constantly telling my own children, I have 2 kids here at FM High School, 9th and 11th grade, like, can I just tell you this now? Because it took me 40 years to hear this. It took me 40 years to realize that each and every chapter was meant to be just that. It was meant to be a chapter of the story that will be my life. And I spend a lot of time walking through the Fayetteville Cemetery. It's one of my favorite places to walk, and I think what that does is every single day reminds me of this infinite game we're all playing. That's a Simon Sinek, a guy I listen to, a motivational, amazing speaker. And he talks about playing the infinite game, that we're not making finite decisions, that these things we're doing day in and day out are part of a much longer process that we all won't even understand until it's all said and done. But what I do know is that I want to say at the end of this, whatever day that is, that I lived my life in a space of being curious, compassionate, and knowing that I contributed. So I just wish, again, it hadn't taken me that long. I don't know if anyone else is in that boat.
Knowing that you matter.
Knowing that I matter and knowing that it is absolutely not a straight shot, and that each chapter is so very important, just like a book. You can't have a beautiful story without the ups and downs of every single chapter. Think about your favorite book. What if 3 of the chapters weren't there? Would not be a great story. What happens next? Well, we're going to skip that chapter. No, you can't. So yeah, I do wish someone had told me that sooner.
So for me, that book was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I was a lazy reader in high school, and one Christmas I sat down, and every day over Christmas break, I finished that book. The first book I ever actually finished, maybe the last, no, I'm just kidding. So I'm an immigrant, grew up in Rochester in the inner city schools. My last 2 high school interviews for college were Harvard and a 6-year medical program with RPI and Albany Med. And the Harvard interviewer asked me, if you get into both, where are you going? I said, I'm going to go to the 6-year program. And he goes, you'd say no to Harvard, right? I said, well, you're not guaranteeing me medicine. That's who I want to be as a doctor, and these guys are. So if you guarantee me medical school, I'll say Harvard. Needless to say, I didn't get into Harvard, and I got into the 6-year program. And for me, until that point, and when I got the rejection letter from Harvard, I was disappointed, but I knew that I was going to be doing medicine, so that was my dream, my goal. But until that point, that immigrant dream had been the perfect dream. I was achieving. I took, you were talking about earlier, I took 8 APs. I took band during lunch. I played 3 sports, was captain, did Model UN. Actually, FM was the bane of our existence in Model UN. I can tell you that at our regional events, maths team, etc., as a class president. And then I got to college in my 2nd semester. Our family went through a hardship, and I didn't know to ask for help, and somebody didn't see me. And I ended up getting 4 Ds and an F for a kid who had never gotten, a B minus. And I failed out of the program. And I remember, so turning points, that was probably one of the biggest ones, because I remember sitting in my dorm bathroom for what felt like 4 hours, was probably like 4 minutes, because I'm sure the water was probably too cold or something in the dorm. And then I realized, but this is who I am, right? So I just have to keep living my journey and have to figure out if one door shuts, another one opens, right? So, sometimes rejection is redirection, right? And at this point, I wasn't going to graduate and go to Albany Medical. I had to figure out a way to graduate and do something else to get to med school. I ended up going to a foreign medical school, and the journey brought me back to an American medical school where I get to be a dean now. And along the way, we have boards exams. I passed some, I failed some. And what I realized is, and I take this from Kobe Bryant, what is failure? That's one thing we have to redefine. So we're going to do a lot of definitions today in terms of resetting things, right? So, if you learn something, then it's a success. It's progress, right? And if you continue to focus on what you've learned along the way, and this is what we tell, our son is 23, and throughout his journey in school, the one thing he told us when he was in his 2nd year of college, came home for break, and he said, you guys are the lousiest parents. And we have a good friendship. I'm like, what's wrong with you, man? What kind of punk are you being right now, right? And so he says, well, you guys haven't looked at my report card since 7th grade, right? Now, I'm an Indian parent, so if you want to talk helicoptering, we've written the book on that stuff, right? And especially in these school districts here, we have a lot of people where we as parents are very, very particular about how we want our kids to grow and what they do and how they do it and what they achieve. And he was in his 2nd year of college, and we hadn't looked at his report card in college either. And he goes, what sucks about that is that you guys just asked me, did you do your best? So he's like, I kept having to police myself, right? I'm dropping everything today. So we said, but in the real world, it's going to be you, right? We're not always going to be there. And so in his journey, what he learned was what the lessons we had learned, which was ultimately, you're accountable to yourself, right? Competition, at the end of the day, it was never about the other person. I had a cousin who was 3 months older than me in high school, and through junior high, we lived together in a joint family as a joint immigrant family. And from 7th grade, when I got into the accelerated program and she didn't, I remember telling her then, don't compete with me. And it wasn't because I'm going to kick your butt. It was more because that's too limited a scope for you, right? So, you compete with somebody else, you beat everybody else in class, and they all got 50s and you got a 55. What was that, right? So, we used to joke that the competition is always against 100, which is your best. And then all you do is focus on exactly what Kate said. That infinite thing is really about the word better, right? So recently I've had my enlightened moment. Good, better, best is the way we put these words. If you flip it to good, best, better, right? Best is infinite. Again, Jordan, Kobe, right? These Roger Federer, Djokovic, all these guys talk about each day their focus is just being better, right? And there are many bests you have along the way, but that best isn't a successive incremental thing, it's this journey, right? And those, quote, low points are sometimes the best teaching moments that help us to be better, right? So I'll stay quiet and you'll go on. I think I've said something.
Well, I have so it's funny, you said turning points, and it's hard for me to, I guess the first thing that jumped out at me was, and it's not real profound, but so when I was an English major undergrad in college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was finished, but I had a really dear friend of mine, one of my roommates, this guy Lauren Thompson. He lives in New Hampshire, or has a summer camp in New Hampshire. His family runs a camp in New Hampshire. Anywho, he and I and another guy, we knew we wanted to travel after college, and I graduated in 1989, so this was long before.
Same.
There we go. Long before cell phones, and if you were gonna, we had a 6-month. So I graduated college. I went to FM, BT Dubs, class of '85. The plan was get out of graduate college, work 6 months, live at home, save as much money as I could, and we had a 6-month itinerary. And what we had for an itinerary was a flight, paper tickets in and out of certain places. That was it. We did six weeks in New Zealand, 6 weeks in Australia, a month in Malaysia, Thailand, 2 months in Europe, and we had Let's Go books. We had where are we going to go? And I would say to any of you who have kids who are thinking about traveling at any point in their lives, I would say do it. Go travel. Encourage your kids to travel. Put off the career. You're going to work for a long time. Traveling is a wonderful experience. You have to make a million decisions a day. You get the immediate feeling of your choice right away. But there's one thing that sticks out to me was when we were first in New Zealand, and there were 3 of us. The one guy, my buddy from college, was like 6'1". This other buddy, Judd, who came with us, was like 6'4". We learned in about 30 seconds that we were hitchhiking, that nobody was going to pick up 3 guys at one time hitchhiking. So we would split up and let's meet in the next town. Okay, so we're hitchhiking. And you had everything in the world on your back. You had a backpack, and you had all your clothes and your sleeping bag, and et cetera, your tent and everything on your back. And the worst thing that was going to happen to you there was that everything was going to get wet. Like that was it. You went all the time like, I got to stay dry, because that would be really bad, right? And we just had one day, we woke up, it was dumping rain, we had to get to this next town, we were hitchhiking, we arrived at this campsite, it was still pouring rain, we put up our tents, it was pouring rain, we went to bed, we woke up the next day, it was pouring rain, we had to pack up everything, and everything that I had was soaking wet. My tent was soaking wet, my sleeping bag was soaking wet, all my clothing was soaking wet, I was soaking wet. Anywho, you just stuffed everything in the bag, and we got to the next town, and the next town I think was Nelson. I think it was Nelson, which is I want to say, I think we're in the South Island of New Zealand. Anyway, got to this park, took my tent out, threw my tent up in a tree, like the tent got dried out. My buddies showed up like one at a time. Hey, where are we going to stay? We found a youth hostel. We dragged all our stuff to the youth hostel. We got a room for like $4 or whatever it was then. Found a laundromat down the road, went down to the laundromat, threw all our stuff, and then washed everything we owned and dried everything we owned, right? So that was it. That was, for that chunk of time, you had your whole life in your back, and the worst thing that was going to happen was that everything was going to get soaking wet. And we got all soaking wet, and we figured out the next step, and everything got dry. And then I was like, all right, that's the worst thing that I was possibly anticipating happened, and I'm fine. And I think we spend so much of our time, and our kids spend so much of their time being like, well, what if this happens? What if I don't get into this class? Or what if I don't get into this school? Or what if I don't make the team? And it's like, and again, obviously people can get really upset, but you don't hear somebody be like, well, what happened? Well, how'd they die? Well, he did the worst thing that happened to him, and he just dropped dead. It's like, we have to have those things happen. We have to have those experiences, and they happen all the time, and we have to just, we just understand after a while, once we get some miles on us, that like it's not a big deal. It's not such a. It's going to be okay. It'll get sorted out. We'll figure it out. My wife and I say that to each other all the time. We'll figure it out. Half an hour before we got here, I'm coaching. I'm helping out with the girls' JV lacrosse team at JD this year, which is a blast. I'm loving it. We had practice on this grass field. We're all muddy. We go up to have them play some wall ball. It's like 5:20. Okay, we're supposed to be here at 6, and I'm like getting ready to go to my car. I'm like, where are my keys? I'd locked my keys in the trunk, right? So I call up and say, hey, Melissa, do you want me to show up like late and like clean or in my sweatpants? You know, but I didn't care. I was like, it's going to be fine. It's not the end of the world. So I think like as much as we can impart that to our kids, and I think it's just like we have to be with our kids. We have to say, look, this is my first go around with this thing, but I'm going to tell you something. This is not. It's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. But we have to believe it, right? We can't be a parent who's if you don't get into this school, life's over, right? Because life's not over. There are going to be many things that are going to happen, and we've got to keep going. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree. I think that a big part of it is, I think when people try to plan out their life, you know, a decade ahead, 2 decades ahead, this is what my life will look like. A lot of it is to soothe their anxiety about not being certain about a future. And uncertainty is so stressful to sit with and to tolerate that it just creates a little Band-Aid effect. If I can just have this fantasy vision in my head, you know, okay, I'm going to get married at 25, I'll have my first kid by 30, and then I'll have da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then it's all planned out, and now I feel better about life. It very rarely, if ever, goes that way. And I think what I have learned, especially at those lowest points, many I shared, there are a jillion more, but it's about surrender. It's about that I can plan, I can predict, but I also know that I don't know at this point. I mean, even the practice that I have right now, I had zero interest in developing a group practice. That was not a plan that was in my head, but I was pumping gas and saw that the building was for sale next door, and I'm like, that would be cool. Think about what we could do in this community.
You worked at a gas station while at the same time?
Yeah, you know,
that's fantastic.
That's right. Side hustle. Well,
Yeah.
but it's surrendering to the good that can come your way and being open to the learning experiences as they present themselves, but also then filtering through, knowing when it's time to leave something, knowing when it's like, all right, I am gritting my way through this again and again and again, and maybe it's just time to pivot. And that is okay. It's giving yourself permission to make those changes, and it becomes a very intentional process of surrender, reflect, pivot, let go, and it's not painful to let something go, whether it's a friendship or, you know, a job, whatever it is, or even an idea.
So I'll say something on this. My high school yearbook quote was, "A half-empty glass is also half full." So I'm a positive psychology guy. And so I play with words often for my own rationalization. So a word like surrender, my instinctive thought as soon as you said that was embrace.
Yeah.
Right? Versus surrender.
Yeah.
One creates a hierarchy in my mind. The other is a joy. Right? And we've talked about this before. And so even for our kids, the proactive, positive aspects of showing them, right? So the word you said, you know, be a parent, right? Be a parent as a parent, right? The more we're able to have open conversation, I will tell you, the language changes as they change, as our kids grow older, right? And so we forget who we were as a 10-year-old when we're trying to parent that 10-year-old, thinking as a 20, 30, whatever age our age is. When you remember who you were as a 10-year-old, half the stuff they say actually makes sense. Not all of it. Half of it makes sense, right? And then you think, they might be saying it the way I want or thinking the way I'm thinking, but does that make them wrong? Not necessarily, right? I think my son has been one of my greatest teachers when he's questioned what I've said, because this is our tradition, he's like, yeah, what does that mean to me, right? It's not my tradition. I'm like, you're not wrong, so what would you want your tradition to be? Let's make it our tradition, something that we build together. And it's really helped me to grow and actually be more humble along the way as well. But I think it's a great point that you make.
And those times, as I think about surrender and embrace and those hard times, you know, when everything gets wet, I think to myself at times, like, I'm not going to let this define me. And as I listen to you, I think, maybe I need to do that on occasion. Maybe those things are the times that do define us. Those are, not solely, there are so many different moments and pieces, but it's a really powerful thing to think about, you know? We talked a lot, there's so much to unpack. I mean, is this cool? Yeah, we're good? Okay, so much to unpack, but the thing that I'd like to get back to, if we could, is the notion of failure and success, and those two things. And I think about Brené Brown, who says, you can't have courage without vulnerability. And same thing goes. You can't have success, whatever that looks like, without failure. And so could we spend a little bit of time talking about your thoughts about that, your experiences?
I don't know how this works. Are we going the same order?
We don't have to.
You can just jump
There's no
in.
failure.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no failure. Okay. Well, the thing that you just said there, maybe when you said defining myself, like maybe I need to define myself in that moment. I think we do a lot of people a lot of good when we can own being undone. When something happens like that, and we see, and we're just, this is rocking my world right now, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be rocking my world in 48 hours, but right now this is really difficult for me, and I'm having a hard time with it, and that's okay, because I think a lot of stuff that we do in the presence of our kids, and I work in a school. My day job is I work in a high school for 25 years, 26 years, and I try to take every opportunity I can to screw up in front of the kids, or to be goofy, and own it, so that they're like, okay, that's fine, you know. Like I think that leads to success, because you need to take, and especially now, you know, with I don't want to pull my cell phone out and hold it up, but there's so much pressure to do everything right and to look so good and to never be awkward. Like, I think there's such this gigantic fear of being awkward. Like, I think I would say sometimes I'm not sure if it's the same thing as failure, but it's the fear of being awkward is right up there with the fear of failing. And I think that we need to show people, or show the kids, that that's okay. That's because that's the way to get to something good. If we need to constantly try to be in a state where we are making ourselves available to trying something new, and I don't want to say failing at it, but like, I'm going to do this thing, and I'm fully okay if it's not like a glowing success, if I just give it a whirl, because those are the things you stumble on something, all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is kind of fun, or this is interesting, or never knew it like this, or, you know, and you have to take these chances with these things, and being okay with being silly or awkward or whatever it is. I think that opens the door for so many of us to find things that we can truly love, and I think for kids to see that, I think that's great. So I'm pro awkward. I'm pro like embarrassing your children when they're young. I think that's the way to start. By the way, start embarrassing your children as soon as you can when they're little, and then they will, if they're constantly embarrassed by you, and I don't mean by like getting drunk at the party, but like, you know, doing something, you know, just being silly, and your kids eventually become unembarrassable, and then they're like, what else you got? You know, like the rest of the world, they're like, okay, I'll do the thing, you know, so.
So I was telling you earlier that, so my son went to CBA, and from 7th to 12th grades, the principal had me come and speak on wellness to the students. So 7th and 8th grade, my son would not make eye contact with me at all. He wanted to hide behind his friends and sitting there 9th and 10th grade, he was like, fine, all right, that's fine, you know. And by 11th, 12th grade, he's like, yeah, you know, you make them laugh, and, you know, they think you're kind of cool. And, you know, I used to tell them, like, blue Gatorade will give you diarrhea because of blue coloring, so don't drink blue Gatorade. He loved blue Gatorade, so all his friends would be like, dude, you better not drink that, your dad's going to tell you, right? And so I think the humor part, the being real part is very important. Definitions-wise, success, I would say success is the achievement of contentment and peace. And that's a dynamic in your life, so it's not like you figured it out at one age and then that's what it is the rest of your life. We have to keep coming back to that, right? Helping our kids to come back to recognizing, are they contented? Are they at peace with where they are in their journey, right? And that doesn't mean outcomes work out. In fact, the science, as you mentioned, right, it's happiness, sustained happiness is when you focus on a sense of durable plentitude that I'm still good, right? Again, Kobe and Jordan, I quote them all the time. They take a shot, 50-50 chance you're going to make it. 50% of school is failure, right? That's the Hall of Fame, right? 300 batting average in baseball. If you got a 30 on a test in school, man, the school's coming after the parents too at that point, right? Like, what is this kid doing? But it's the Hall of Fame. So we have relative standards for different things, but I think that contentment and peace is a foundation. And if that's one message I would leave, even for all of us, how often do we think about that? What does that mean? What does that look like, you know, in our life at this point? Are we there? And if not, what does that mean? How do we get there? Right?
Yeah.
Well, to me, I think I love the idea of failure through being silly and playful as just a concept in and of itself. And often in counseling, I will give people the assignment of just go do something that you really suck at. Like, just see what that experience is like. You know, go bowling unless you're a really good bowler, or like go dancing unless you're really, like, do something intentionally that you know that you are not good at, so that you start to build the skill set of not being good at things and learning that that's okay. That being said, I think where it gets really tricky is that, I'm like, how do I say this? It's as parents, we have to know how to do this too. It's not just about what we're telling our kids to do. I think that there are so many well-intended parents who may want their kids or say the right thing to their kids or try to say the right thing to their kids, but then don't model it themselves. And so maybe it's like, say with emotional regulation, that's probably the biggest failure that I would see. It's like losing your temper or losing, you know, saying the wrong thing. It comes out sideways, and it's not because you're mean, it's not because you're a bad parent, but it's because you're in the heat of the moment, and maybe you're working on some of that, you know, emotional regulation. But at the same time, going back and repairing with your kids, saying, hey, I messed up there, is so much more powerful and impactful than having not made that mistake to begin with, right? It teaches them, just like Will was saying, what it's like to make an emotionally impactful mistake and then still letting it be okay. And it's learning, and it's circling back, and it's learning. So it's like, you know, the playful part of failure, I think, is so good to practice. But then I would say, too, as adults, we really need to be modeling the repair or what happens after we fail, how we talk about it, that we acknowledge it, that we can hold our own part, that we're not just blaming. And that's something that I see again and again and again, having such an impact for the kids.
Yeah. The last thing I'll note to that is we also have to get real about what we look at success as parents. Now, we can all say peace and contentment while we're working 14 hours a day, driving the fancy car, pushing, talking about our friend who has the lake house. And I think there's got to be this balance in it. So that's the constant intention that I try to live with. I hang out with people who have a lot of money, but I remind my kids sometimes that those are the most unhappy people I've ever met. They're great people, but we spend a lot of time sitting at maybe a bar, and they're over drinking, and they're talking about the last time they saw their kid or their failed marriage, and they're not truly happy. But to our kids, they drive the fancy car and they have the big house, they have the 6 houses, whatever it is. So I think it's just always reminding our kids that those are wonderful, amazing people, but at the same time, what our own definition of success is. So I make just as big a deal out of sitting on my couch in the morning and seeing the cardinal come to my bird feeder, or the oriole, oh my gosh. And my teenagers are rolling their eyes at me like, Mom, that's ridiculous. I'm like, yeah, but that's so amazing. And my happiest moment right now is the fact that I'm sitting on the couch with both my teenagers in the same room. That, to me, is success. That they came down the stairs and chose to sit in the room with me shows me success. So the other thing that we do in our house, which I get a lot of eye rolls about, is we strive for a solid B+ average every day. That's me, that's my husband, that's my kids. And I learned that once just listening to a TEDx, and the guy said, you know, strive for a solid B+, because A+ doesn't really exist. That's perfection, right, in our world. So whenever my kids are like, Mom, how'd you do today at work? Or, you know, what happened? That sounds great. I'm like, I got a solid B+ there, and I'm really proud of it, you know. So I think that's just been helpful, and it sets the tone in our home for, you know, even I don't care about the actual average of a B+, but it's the messaging that perfection doesn't exist. And I think that's always a great foundation to go back to.
It's resonating. I mean, I think the idea of starting from acceptance, right, and then looking to achieve,
Yeah.
you fall back to acceptance, right? But you start from rejecting the present, wanting something, nothing in between is good enough, right? And either way, it's your journey. But one, every little gain is valued, celebrated, right? You had a great moment with, you know, your kids. That's a celebration. But if you have such a very narrow scope definition of what joy looks like, you're going to have a hard time finding it.
Ever.
The broader your definition of what it looks like, the more you can live it, right? So that's great.
I think the other thing too is that a lot of kids that you ask, you know, what is the definition of success? They'll talk about money. You know, I've got to be rich, I've got to be famous, I've got to be whatever. The reality is, with the research, the people who have attained that level of, you know, financial success, a lot of it is empty, like Kate was talking about. And it's not, it's like I hit this benchmark and I thought that would make me happy, and I, you know, sacrificed all of these other things in order to get there, most notably relationships in a lot of cases. And I don't care. You know, I chased after that wrong goal. And so it's recognizing, who are you really? What is important to you? And it almost always does come back to relationships.
I did sacrifice my relationship with my hair along the way, but you know, I've embraced it now. So,
Well, along those lines, there's two ways to be rich, which is to have more or to want less, you know. And I think if you guys have all said things that I'm interested in, but the idea of success being, you know, attaining peace and contentment, you know, is that what you said, peace and contentment, right? And the concept of moments, right? Like, we can have success in a day 5 times, and in between those 5 times of feeling peace and contentment, we can have some, you know, we step in dog crap or something, right? And you're going to have those moments, and with our kids, I think a lot. Again, my kids are, you know, my Brady Bunch is 20 to 26, right? So they're not around as much as they used to be, and so it's like when they're here, it's really like I want to just suck it all in and just be like, this is so great. And so it's about those moments, and just to say, this is great right here, you know.
so I want to ask the audience a question. This is off script, I think. There's no script, but anyway.
I've given up
I'm
the
just
script.
totally kidding. Yeah.
We don't need a script.
I think she's getting to know as well.
That's it.
How many people know your child's life story from them? Right? We know their story from our eyes and what we've seen. How many of us know their life story from them? Right? Perspective, right? Makes a great difference in relationships. In our med school, we actually teach the students to learn life stories before they get medical histories, because it gives us context, perspective, right? And what happens is now, I mean, and as I say this, I don't know my son's life story through his eyes. I've known it along the way, but at 23, I truly don't know what he would say his life story is. And I'm going to go home. He's visiting us from New York. I'm going to go home. I'm going to ask him tonight. I want to know your life
Do
story.
you say that do they say that to the patients? What's
Yeah.
your life story?
So what we
I like
do
that.
is we'll say, we actually share our life story first. So that's the moment of vulnerability. You share something personal, but it creates a space for them to be able to share theirs, right? And then when you get that life story, you have context, right? What do they value? I know what I value in my son's life. What does he value, right? And suddenly you have communication, right? You have context, and that leads to a more compassionate relationship because we don't really know what was most meaningful in their journey along the way, right? So that's a great lesson I just learned tonight as we were talking. I'm going to go back and find out, like, hey, man.
Did you just make that up?
Yes,
Yeah.
thanks to you guys. Yeah.
So in the book, she actually says, get a PhD in your child, and taking that a step further from their perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So powerful.
There's
Yeah.
a quote that says, I want to be remembered as a happy mother who enjoyed life. And that really deeply resonated with me because that is success for me. If my children one day state that I had a really happy mom and she enjoyed life. It's so simple. But I don't want my kids someday to say, I had a really hectic, crazy mom who hated other people. Really think about that for yourself. And it doesn't have to just be your kids. What do you want your spouse to say? What do you want your friends to one day say? I think a lot about that and how that relates to success for me is really that feeling, that energy you are leaving every room. I like to call it your exit energy. What are you leaving every single interaction with the other people around you feeling? So that's a big one for me.
I mean, I also think, we have to give ourselves as parents a little bit of a pass, right? You do the best you can with what you knew then. Because we go back and we judge, right? And we judge ourselves, right? And our kids obviously judge us a lot of times. But, what I've learned, and I've said this to my son when he was young, I'm like, look, I'm doing the best I can with what I know now, right? And what I'm doing, I did the best I could with what I knew then. Then life happens and you learn along the way. But I can't go back and change that, right? What I can do is what I've learned, apply that as we move forward. And hopefully that works for us in our relationship as we grow, right? But we don't, sometimes, and we're here talking about how we can help our children understand competition and the intensity of teenage years and the hormones and the achievements and accomplishments. And in that process, we're never going to get to be this age again, right? So I remember when my son was 12 and he's like, it's my childhood, we should do what I want to do. I'm like, listen, bro, I don't get to come back and live these years again. Sometimes you're going to have to do what I want to do, right? And we actually did karate with him from age 7, my wife, he and I, for 5 years together. And believe you me, you talk about vulnerability and humility, right? When the kid can kick up to here and you're barely getting your, knee up. It was an experience where what we did was just create shared moments. And those are also of value, right? He still laughs at how bad we were, but you know what? Hey, man, it was fun, right?
You used the word competition, and I wonder if we could talk about this a little bit. So we hear from students all the time about the experience of competition here among each other. So they tell us that their relationships with their peers, with their friends, the quality of their relationships is being eroded by sort of this toxic competition that they feel, this zero sum, as Jennifer Wallace talks about, this notion of if I win, then you can't win too, you have to lose, or if I get this grade, then you can't get this, there's just not enough to
Everyone
go
can't be a
around.
valedictorian, right?
Right. So how do we help reframe how we think about competition? How do we help young people and ourselves even celebrate each other in the spirit of knowing that it is about mattering, it is about connection, it is about being in those moments where we may judge ourselves, but to just say there's just not enough. Like, I'm the winner, you're the loser. I'm the one who's successful, you're less successful. Like, how do we get kids to think differently about that, or how do we think differently about that as adults?
Well, I mean, I will say that one of the lessons used is that we're not all running on the same track, right? We're all maybe running towards a goal, moving towards a goal, but each one of us has our own journey. And again, as I said, if the competition, right, is against yourself, who you were yesterday, the competition is against the 100, as to say, perfection, which isn't something necessarily you achieve, but if you keep that as a bar, you focus on being better, the others fade away, because now your focus is on self-improvement, right? And that's something that you can even gauge and measure over time. We talk about metrics. They can be detrimental when they become a weight on the shoulder, or they can be a foundation when you can be uplifted by them, right? So if you're getting metrics not with judgment, but with an opportunity to learn, and then that's discussed and valued, right, at home and in school, then that becomes a different, again, the tone, the language, right? Is it a defeatist mentality, or is it a celebratory mentality, right? So I think in the schools, how we present things is very important. I had teachers who were great at doing that, and then people who put up, hurdles in terms of even emotional weight that comes with it, right? So I think it matters to help the kid understand that this is about your journey, right? And the fact that everybody in the class could get 100 on a test and that would be real, right, is a possibility that does exist, right? And that doesn't really have to do with anybody else, because it's you and the content and the knowledge and how you're absorbing it and how we can support you in learning it better, right? But that's a message that has to be reinforced, because it gets lost very quickly, because peer languaging is probably even more important than what we say to them, right? And so peer culture matters just as much, if not more, I would say.
I mean, high school's tough. It's a real artificial reality, the likes of which will not be replicated in the rest of your life. To have all these different arenas, that I have to go in and be like, all right, I got to go put on my math brain now, and I've got to really have the brain to crush it in math, and then I have to be able to go into my English class and crush it there, and then I have to go, the idea that any of us are going to be able to, the expectation that you're supposed to be really great in all these things, it's pretty silly. So I guess what I just, and I'll just be straight up with kids and just be, this is silly, this is not going to happen again. The goal here is for you to find something that speaks to you. Hopefully something speaks to you. And it, by the way, it doesn't have to be an academic subject. I love it when kids come in and they're like, I know I want to be a carpenter, or I know I want to be a mechanic, and you get them talking about that, and you can see them go into this other place, and that's wonderful. And it's like, that's it. You've won right there. You figured something out, and with the rest of it, just it's a game, and you do your best playing the game. And when you find your passion, that's what you really want to throw yourself into. But what's the quote? If you're judged on being a fish, what's the thing about the
monkey and the fish?
Is a monkey in the fish?
Well, it's all the animals climbing the tree.
Yeah, something. If you're you're a fish trying to climb a tree. The monkey. Yeah, something about the monkey. There's two animals. There are two animals. One of them is really good at swimming. The other one isn't quite so good. If you've judged yourself to be thinking you're going to be a fish, you're really a monkey. It's not going to work out. Something like that. I don't know.
Well, basically, it's
you can't, we're not all going to be. They have to make a class here for the kids that are going to be math people, right? If you want to go be in that class with the kids who have the math brains, go ahead. But understand that you're going to, you can go over here and be awesome over here. But I think that to me it's like celebrate yourself, give it, this is sort of along the same lines as just go ahead. Just do your best and celebrate the process of it, and some of it's going to work out and some of it's not, and that's life. Some of it's going to work out and some of it's not.
So I can tell you though, I will say, the achievement culture, it does carry through for people, right? So college, we see a lot of anxiety, depression, fear. Medical school, where it's the top whatever percent, they come into medical school and the amount of anxiety we see among students and distress, it's very real, because the further they go, the more they expect of themselves, versus actually celebrating how far they've come, right? And so we just graduated medical school yesterday, and we've had people who wanted to be a plastic surgeon or a dermatologist who ended up becoming a great doctor, but not necessarily in the thing that they thought they were going to be. And what I tell them in medical school is, day one, leave your 6-year-old's dream at the door, because the process is going to help you find yourself, right? So, you lived a life between when you set a goal and then when you progress. And if you don't let that experience and don't value that experience, you're not even going to really recognize who you are, because you have this vision of who you were. That's not who you've become at this point, right? And so helping people, but we still see it. And in the world of finance, I actually spoke once, they give report cards to wealth managers, like compared to your peers, you're in the bottom quartile, in front of everybody else, right? It's nuts.
Right. No, and I meant the expectation to be amazing in these disparate
Different
things.
disciplines, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny, I have a client in my private practice who's an ER doc, and he talks about the hierarchy of the doctors, and like, well, the other doctors are like, ER doc, oh, it's great you can patch somebody up, but you don't really know a lot about anything, do you? And then it's like,
Family
and
docs.
I'm like,
We build relationships.
I'm
They
like,
don't.
you're an ER doc. That's kind of like a badass thing to be, and you're getting, these other guys are telling you you're not. I'm like, that's rough,
It's true.
So,
I think about success as creating a life of meaning, and I have come to really believe that one of the best things that we can do as educators and parents and for our kids is to help them own their process, and to know that it is ongoing, that it's not about arriving. It is not about, it really, at the risk of the cliche, it is the journey. And it's the paying attention along the way. And we've used language here like moments, like being present. You just said, celebrate yourself. Find something, celebrate yourself. And I go back to this idea that's so powerful, and what it feels like to be celebrated. We remember those things. Like, I remember those moments. I just had one, by the way, thank you. But like, I remember those, but I remember that they started with my parents. And it was something little, and we were on vacation. I think I was like 5. I have an identical twin sister, and we were at this place in a swimming pool, and they were doing like races. And yeah, it was crazy.
I hated those.
Yeah, right? And so I started running a while ago, and I no longer do, but one of my friends I was running with got me a sticker that says, "This is my race pace." Because I'd get to the end of a 5K, and they'd be like, "Sprint," and I'm like, "I am," right? But same thing happened when I was 5, and I just remember like coming up out of the end of the pool, and like, and it was such a long pool when you're 5, and we get to the end, and my mom was there, and she just looked down, and she said, "Did you have fun?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did," and that was the most important thing to her. And that, like, the lifetime, you've talked about your parents too. The reason I ended up in Syracuse is I dropped out of law school. I came up here and dropped out of law school, And I wouldn't recommend doing it in this particular way, but I dropped out and then I called home. It worked out for me, but talk about owning. I got on the phone and I said, "Hey, Mom, what's going on?" And she could hear it in my voice. And she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, you might want to sit down. I just dropped out of law school." And there was like silence. It felt like an hour, but it was probably 20 seconds. And I said, are you still there? And she goes, "Oh, thank goodness." Right? I love that. Thank you. I felt like that. Talk about feeling like you matter no matter what. But I'm really struck by, the stories that we have. I had this really cool conversation with one of my students today. And it really was about, like, what you pay attention to defines your life experience, how you are present in your life in those moments. So if we can shift from having our kids be in this incredible fishbowl that they feel like they're in always and having to be getting straight A's, but that's still not enough, or joining or heading up every club or team or whatever. And we're working at it, I think, as a group and all of us in that, but it's really striking the power that comes from being able to be present with someone who makes you feel like you matter.
If they feel like they're stuck in a fishbowl, we can remind them they're the monkey and they can jump up on the tree and then go.
I'm not sure I'll get that right.
I don't think we'll ever get it right.
I think the other piece that comes with this, though, is the parents teaching resilience. It's teaching your child really early on how to cope with the stress of life, because in a healthy way. And that's just as important as navigating the stressful moment with them. And that's just as important, they're watching. So if I'm coming home from a stressful day at work and I'm going right to the bottle of wine and that's how I'm getting through it, no judgment. But if that's my only go-to, what are my kids watching? I have no idea, and I don't know what they're thinking. It'd be great to ask them. But Dana has worked directly with my beautiful kiddos, and that's one piece where we're really working on, well, what are you going to do next? Like, what would you go do right now that might help you get out of this stressful situation? Is it going and working out, and getting on the treadmill and running a little bit and helping those endorphins get going, and those go-to things? We need to teach our kids about those options. So that's just another piece that just came up for me, is teaching them the coping. Yeah. Because it's always going to be hard, and the resilient people are the successful people for me are the ones that get through the hard and navigate the hard in a beautiful way and come out the other end. And you're like, wow, that's the best leader I've ever seen. It's not the one who did everything perfect. It's the one that poured into the other people around them, showed up, cared, taught, led by example, and got through the other side. You're like, I want to be like you. So, yeah.
I want to be like you.
I want to be like you.
So to your point, so that's coaching you just said, which is fantastic. I think we can make everybody a coach. So advising is when you tell them, right, that this is what you can do. Coaching is where you reflect with them of what would they want to do, what do they see as their options in front of them, and helping them think through it. And if you do that, you're actually coaching your kid at the time, and they're coming up with solutions that are going to be more agreeable with their mindset and their stage of, grief in the process, or recovery in the process, adapting in the process. So just asking those exact questions that you said, that's coaching, 101, basically, right? And that's a great skill, right, that we can actually take with us.
So we're getting towards the end of our time, and I want to have people be able to mingle a little bit, have some refreshments, meet and talk with all of you folks. So how about we do this? If you could give your 15-year-old self a piece of advice right now, what would that be? It could be 16, 17, 18 too, but
I think I would probably say you're going to figure it out. Yeah, have some confidence and you're going to figure it out, because I think that's what I think it's horrifying for high school kids, because I think there's an expectation that they know that, you think about it, you're whatever, 17 or 18, and you're supposed to, if you're going to say, let's say college, you're applying to a college and you're supposed to know what it is you actually want to study at that college, which is extrapolated out for the rest of your life. What do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I think if we sort of know what we want to do, the ones that think they want, it's always the veterinarians, like the second grade kid that's like, I want to be a veterinarian because they like ponies, But everybody else is just pretending, I think. But I think if you actually know, if somebody could come and give you, I'm going to give you a little present, and this present is what you should do with the rest of your life, or like this is what you should do, and they give you a little nugget, you'd be just like, oh, this is great present, But I think what I would want to say to myself would be, you're going to figure it out, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to figure it out tomorrow, and you're going to go around a couple, like, it's not this straight, it's the stock market. Not today's stock market. No, it's whatever. It's going to go like this, and you're going to go around some corners. As long as you kind of keep moving, you're going to be okay. But in general, you're going to figure it out, and you're going to have times when you don't think you are figuring it out, but it's going to be okay. You're going to figure it out. I think that would have been nice to hear.
I think for me, it's 3 quick things. One is to think about, what do you want your meaningful contribution to be? What do you want your purpose to be? And lean into that, versus what do you want to be, right? The second is, and I always give Denzel Washington props for this, my man, right? Discipline and consistency, right? Whatever you're doing, if you do it with discipline and you do it with consistency, you're going to get closer to goal than if you don't, right? And the third one, probably the most important, is if you're not having fun, change something, right? Because life is too short.
You go? You ready?
You go. Yeah.
All right, I'll go. I think mine would be slow down. Slow down. I think when I was 15, I wanted to be 25. And I felt this drive to get to this point, to always be looking ahead, to always be planning for my future. And I think I had this belief that if I made the wrong step, that it would all just disappear. If I chose the wrong, if I didn't do well enough on a test, if I didn't do the right sport, if I didn't hang out with the right people, if I didn't take, whatever it was so seriously, that it would all just go away. There was like this internal pressure that I felt, and I think it would have just been slow down, take a deep breath, like training my body to actually do that, and to not always plan for the next thing, but to know that there are so many different iterations of how this life can go. And then, similar to Will's point, it's like that I will figure it out. But by foreclosing so fast and making these decisions so fast to catapult me forward, I was almost like robbing myself of that experience. So slow down, pull back.
I love that. I've had the most time to think, so
It better be good, Kate.
I came to focus on being right here. Be where you are. I think even before phones, I graduated in 99, and we didn't have cell phones even when I went to college, so I was still always focused on the next thing, the next person. Going through being 15 makes me think, no, I don't want to go back there, because I was always focused on what they were doing, what my friends were doing without me, and that's even worse now for our poor kiddos on Snapchat. They can see where their friends are at every moment. And I wish I had just focused on who was standing right in front of me in that room, who was giving me their actual heart and their time, rather than worrying about everything going on outside of that one space I was in. And it's a huge focus of mine right now to get back to that.
Thanks. I think mine would be, you don't need to take yourself so seriously. And then every combination of yours and yours and yours and yours. Yeah, for sure.
Seriously? No.
Seriously. Anybody want to add something for the good of the cause before we end for the evening? I've got some closing remarks to make just briefly, but anything else you want to leave folks with tonight?
I do. I think the master key to the whole thing is understanding unconditional love. So with love, we barter, if this, then that, right? If you perform, I love you. If you don't, you need to work harder, I'm mad at you, right? Unconditional love is giving for the sake of giving, not with an expectation, right? And receiving as is without condition. And I think if we can build that relationship with our family members, our kids, even with our kids' teachers, okay, I'm going to give it back a little, give you guys some credit here. At the end of the day, these are people with families in their own lives, and we often judge the school should, they should, I deserve, I pay my taxes. These are people in our communities who are trying to do good for many, right? And we sometimes lose sight of that as well, right? So if you think about unconditional love, if you haven't watched the movie Interstellar, it actually teaches a lot about this as well. But just reflect on unconditional love. I think that is the master key to the whole thing.
You're a big movie guy.
Oh yeah,
I'm
we were
figuring this
quoting
out.
those
Yeah, we'll
before.
talk. Okay.
Anybody else?
I just think, and several people, we've sort of talked about this a little bit, but I think it's, when in doubt, self-define. That's my thing, is if you're ever in a situation with your kid, or it can be your kid, it can be your partner, it can be your friend, is just say, just tell them where you're coming from in the language that is at the least finger-pointing and judgmental. And with our kids, they have this expectation, it comes, they're in school for a long time, and they see all these teachers who, and I love teachers, I was a teacher a while ago, who are like, this is what we're doing today, and here's what you need to know, and they think that adults have it all figured out. And if you can find that space where you can tell your kid, I don't have it figured out, I'm doing my best, we're going to be okay, but understand that I don't know the right answer all the time, and that's okay too, but I do love you like crazy, and this is my favorite part of being alive, is being your parent. I think that's the most important thing, is just to be like, we're all in this together, and I'm doing my best, and I might not always have the best answer, but like you said, I'll come back, I'll circle back, and if I screw up too much, I'll circle back and own it. So.
I want to just say thank you to you, to the school, to all of you for being here. I'm full of gratitude that we're even having this conversation, and that there are so many people. I think, to me, it's about going that next step. It's about saying those things to our kids, but it's about saying those things to the kids who are not just ours, right, and to each other. So actually earlier today, I reached out to Professor Hazan, and I was like, you're not going to remember this. This is 25 years ago, but you asked me, you gave me an extension, you hunted me down, and more importantly, you asked me if I was okay. And I just want you to know that stayed with me. And this is such a long overdue thank you, but thank you for seeing me in that moment, and it really had a profound impact on my life. And she wrote back right away, and she's like, Melissa, wow, no, I don't remember that, but but I'm actually in my office right now preparing for my last lecture for human bonding for this semester, and I had to stop and cry. And she said, whatever I said to you in that moment means nothing compared to you telling me that right now. So it's just about this circling, circle out and extend yourself out. But also, that's what you're doing for us right now. That's what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is this on? Yo, it is. I don't actually really have the words to say thank you. This was really powerful and really, really cool. How about another round for our panelists? I'm really moved right now, and I imagine I'm not the only one in the room, by their willingness, your willingness to give up your time to us and to contribute to this incredible conversation. And also, I'm just really grateful for you out in the world, making a difference through your work and your ways of being. So thank you so much. A special thank you to you, Melissa, also for all that you did to make this event grow. It started as this idea and then became very real. And then we had a snow day. And then it became real again. But from your keynote to gathering together our panelists, for helping to get the word out, you should follow her on Instagram. Your excitement is just so contagious, and your expertise and professionalism, and it's just so appreciated. It's been such an honor to work side by side with you, so thank you. Also, a big shout out to the folks in the booth back there. I learned so much today. I had the privilege to spend some time with them while they figured out everything that happens here. It's amazing. There's a lot of buttons back there. It has its own language. I can't even, but Dave Fulkerson, Sam Lee, Joe Pachado, they are amazing tech and AV experts, and they made all the bells and whistles and live stream cameras and technology, sound, lighting work. Everything worked tonight, so thank you. So big round of applause for them. And we had a cool thing happen this morning. Jay McKay and his communication systems class came and worked to set up the stage. They got the beginning set up for us, so they got to do some learning that was very applied. So thank you to them as well. So in closing, perhaps something you heard tonight inspired you. Perhaps tonight becomes part of your own pivotal moment, a turning point, perhaps, where you see something differently, where you have a sense of your own mattering in a different way, a brand new way. Perhaps you're energized to thank the special people in your life who remind you that you matter. Perhaps you'll leave here with renewed purpose and intention to work toward balance, to know you are so much more than grades and accolades and awards. You're more than what you achieve. Perhaps you'll act in ways that help those around you know that they matter. Perhaps you'll send that email or make that phone call. Perhaps we'll come to celebrate each other, knowing that there's more than enough to go around. So whatever your takeaways might be from tonight, we're really, really glad you've been here with us. So we hope you'll take your time leaving. Join us for some refreshments. I don't know if you've all heard about our cookies, but they are awesome.
Cookies are good.
So thank you to Food Services.
They're very good.
But there's coffee and lemonade, water and cookies. So please go out, help yourselves, talk with your neighbors and friends, talk with our panelists. And again, we really appreciate it. So thank you again for the privilege of your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Time to put the slippers back on.